This is In Studio from Simply Timeless. My name is Jay Daniels. One of the iconic centers for arts and entertainment is the Friars Club on East 55th Street in Manhattan. And with a history that stretches back to 1904, the Friars Club continues that legacy of its past members with new and memorable programs. Much of that work is handled by Bob Spiotto, the director of programs for the Friars Club. Let's listen to an interview that I recently had with Bob, where we talk about the lure, the lore, and the legacy. Bob, as director of programs for the Friars Club, what does your job entail, and how long have you served in that particular role?
Well, first, let me say I'm delighted to be on your wonderful program, and I guess as timeless and as timely as you are, the same holds true certainly for the Friars Club. And although I've only been here about 4 years, I'll be celebrating my 4-year anniversary this coming November, this fall. The Friars Club itself has been in existence for 115. So I've got a lot of catching up to do. And I'm delighted to say that the position that I currently hold, the exact title is Director of Programs, is not a title that existed prior to my coming into the club. I had the pleasure of visiting the club on occasion over the years when I was working in various other positions. And I have to say that I was always impressed. Little did I know, as the expression goes, that I would one day find myself at this amazing and legendary institution. And it turned out that the executive director, during a board meeting, was speaking with several board members, including someone that was a dear friend of mine. And I guess it came up in conversation that he felt the need to have someone officially on board serving in that capacity to really kind of organize the programs, to help create programs, to schedule those, produce them, come up with all of these new, interesting, and unique ideas, but also to interface and work very, very specifically with members as well as outside producers who might have an interest in doing something at the club. So when that, I guess, desire was made known, my dear friend Laura Slutsky, who was at the time serving on the board, was very quick to take her cue and mention to the executive director, Michael Jury, that she had the perfect person. And you know, and I'm sure you would agree, that sometimes casting is 99.9%, maybe even a little more. And she basically told him not to look any further, not to put the job out there, that she had the perfect person. And at the time, I was indeed looking for a new challenge. And I spoke with Michael. We set up a time to meet. And at the conclusion of a 2.5-hour interview, I was hired and on with the shows.
And as you've mentioned, programs, arts, entertainment, all of that is an integral part of the Friars Club, and it has been since its inception in the early 1900s. And, you know, you obviously are having to move with the times. Trying out new things is not always an easy thing to do, but you know, you have a lot of legacy that you're having to continue with. I mean, you look back at some of the members of the Friars Club over the years, and that's quite a challenge indeed. But I guess my question would be, how do you take that legacy that the Friars Club has rested upon, and how do you apply that to what you are doing now with these new sort of engagements that you're creating for the Friars Club?
Yes. Well, Jay, as you point out, and as I mentioned a moment ago, we're dealing with 115 years and still going. And, of course, there's no sign of slowing. And it is a challenge. And you mentioned the word legacy, which brings to mind a phrase that I've kind of coined here that I've been using since I've gotten here. And for me, I'm always trying very hard to promote and breathe new life and new energy into the lore, and the legacy. Now, what I mean by that is the lore, which would be the L-O-R-E, the lure, which is the L-U-R-E, and, of course, the legacy. And they all kind of go together, and it's three hands joined together there, if you will, and we have to kind of go forward with that and really try to consistently reinvent ourselves. A lot has changed, certainly in arts and entertainment. In 115 years, the world has changed a lot in 115 years. I mean, the very street that we are on has changed a great deal. And, this legendary, 100-plus-year-old townhouse that is here on East 55th Street, it's surrounded by incredibly tall, skyscrapers. And this grand lady, stands alone here in this particular block between Madison and Park. But we do our best to not only to continue to encourage and kind of keep our older members. I mean, we certainly have members who've been here 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years as friars, and they have seen many, many changes. But we are, of course, trying with great energy and enthusiasm to also encourage younger members. We do have an associate program for our under 40 individuals who may not necessarily be totally involved in the arts, but may be somewhat on the periphery, if you will. But, of course, the arts umbrella has greatly changed because now, of course, we're welcoming people who are also involved in media and social media and film. And, of course, under that arts umbrella, there are so many other aspects where one could still be defined as someone who is working in the arts. However, we also do have other members, both younger and older, who are also involved in other endeavors, whether they be real estate or banking or travel or insurance. I mean, the list goes on. Although we are still required by our friarly bylaws to have at least 60% of our membership involved in some way in the arts. So we do encourage and we continue to try, and I am doing this on an ongoing basis with renewed energy to encourage our younger associate members to create more events, to do more events. And I'm so excited when they either reach out to me or I'm able to reach out to them with an idea, or if they come to me with something that they'd like to do, whether it's a book event or a musical event, or we even have one coming up, which is a one-woman show. Believe it or not, it's a performance by a friar whose full-time job is in real estate, and yet she's created a one-woman show about being a real estate agent. So it's an interesting combination, and you just continue to try to do those things as much as possible, while still, of course, celebrating. And they've come to know my other little phrase here that I use to begin most of my events when I introduce them here is that there's always something to celebrate at the Friars.
Our guest in studio is Bob Spiotto. He is the director of programs for the Friars Club in New York City. Certainly a legendary institution with its roots going back to 1904. And we talk about the collection of people that you have as members who consider themselves friars. And my question would be, within the context of the Friars Club itself, how would you define a friar?
Well, again, to go back to your previous question, Jay, it's again, things have changed. When that handful of press agents, and actually legend has it that there were approximately 11 of them, got together back in 1904 and basically came together to, shall we say, share several alcoholic beverages over which they argued, discussed, and otherwise complained about the fact that so many free tickets were being given away to the then Broadway and or professional theater shows that were taking place in New York. They decided that they needed to get together a little bit more often. Like anything else, they probably like an itinerant or traveling theater company, they bounced from location to location before deciding that they needed to bring together some kind of fraternal group or organization and become a bit more official. And I won't bore you with all the little details of history in between and the various places that they met, but you can imagine they met at bars and steakhouses, very famous here in New York. Actually, one of them still exists. But at that time, their goal with their brotherhood and their fraternity was really to try to straighten things out. They didn't want people taking advantage of the theater industry and watching the finances, I guess, basically go out the window or out into the street when actors should be paid and directors should be paid and people who were performing should be making the money they should be making, and that all of these tickets shouldn't be given away. So if you now chart the history of what a friar is, I would have to defer to the old television show Cheers, because there's an aspect of coming to a location where everybody knows your name.
Yes.
When I arrived here, one of the expressions I learned, and I've heard mentioned on so many occasions, and people always say this, and they still say this, even if they're not necessarily encouraged or if they've heard someone else say it, people always leave here in a better and or happier or more positive mood after they've visited the club. There is no doubt that there is an energy here. There is a feeling here. There is a camaraderie here. There is I guess we can certainly use the word brotherhood, and in this case, sisterhood, although you wouldn't have said that back in the early years because women, of course, were not permitted here in the club, nor were they friars. Things have changed. And so now to try to define a friar, certainly someone who wants to belong to a very special and unique club. No question about that. Someone who wants to be able to have opportunities to meet with likewise individuals, but also continue to meet people perhaps from other walks of life and other businesses and other worlds. To be part of a legendary, truly a legendary, and as I like to say, both a historic and a hysteric organization, because it is certainly at once both of those, a gathering place. I think that, why clubs may still exist to a degree is that, how much of that and how much of what I just described now, coming together for events, being in the same room together, breathing the same air, exchanging the ideas, the face-to-face, person-to-person interaction, which, of course, back in 1904, nobody was using a cell phone, no one was on Twitter, no one was on Instagram. It was all, face-to-face. And I think we've lost a lot of that. And so I think one of the elements that the Friars Club continues to represent is that. And it is not tremendous. I mean, this is not a warehouse establishment. This is not where, there are millions of people here and you're going to get lost in the shuffle. It's very much like a deck of cards. And as I speak to you, I'm sitting in our card room, and then I just kind of thought of this as I see a deck of cards across from me, and I think of all the cards in that deck, and they all get together. They may be dealt out during a game, but at the end, they all come back. They get shuffled up again, and it's a new combination. And that's really what happens here. And that's what makes it an exciting place to not only work, but it's an exciting place to come to as well as a member.
And Bob, I've had the pleasure of coming there at least twice. Once for an open mic night, and then another time for just a relaxed gathering, just enjoying company with a few friends. And I know several of your members, and it really is interesting. First time that I came was with vocalist Jenna Esposito and her husband Jimmy. And it is interesting. You have dozens upon dozens of people there, and yet they all know each other's names. Case in point, when I came on my second visit was with Danny Backer, who is a very talented vocalist and saxophonist, one of your members, and he gave me a tour of the place. And everywhere we went, people were calling out his name, talking to him about, playing a game of pool. I remember there was a gentleman, I think, whose schedule's out his pool games there at the Friars Club. It's like, well, I can fit you in on the 15th at 7 o'clock or something like that. And it's a very congenital atmosphere for sure. And many people hear the Friars Club and they think of, the members that have come out from over the years, like Jerry Lewis, Frank Sinatra, Billy Crystal, Whoopi Goldberg. But we need to make clear that, membership is available to people also who are not necessarily celebrities. Just so happens that they are also members, but really the membership is open to a great number of people. So when one is thinking about joining the Friars Club to become a friar, what are some of the things that you look for in a new member?
What we continue to hear, and I hear it quite often, is people who say, I've always wanted to join, or I always thought about membership, but I never followed up, or I didn't think I could. There's, I guess, the misconception, misperception, perhaps, that still exists out there. I've had many people, and given the gift of gab and being someone who's always trying to bring in new and exciting energy and people to the club, I speak to people all the time, and I talk to them about possibly working with us on a production. And people will say to me, well, I can't do a show at the club because I'm not a friar, or I can't join the club because I'm not a comedian. So, our absolutely wonderful history, and again, I mentioned the historic and the hysteric quality, perhaps on occasion has done us perhaps a little bit of a disservice, because we've almost maybe pigeonholed ourselves in that people perhaps only think of us because of the legendary Friars Club roasts over the years. And of course, we only roast the ones we love, but nevertheless, people have thought, well, this then is not somewhere where I can go. So, there continues to be an ongoing effort by those of us who are here, and friars as well, to spread that word and to make sure that people know that there are more opportunities here, that the times have changed. The history of the club has not changed, although we continue to try to make new history, build new history, and certainly make new memories and build upon all of that and move forward. So people do have there is a process. We do anticipate and expect that people will be proposed by a current member, so that there is some connection. And like any other organization or club, we obviously do want current members to encourage and inspire friends, colleagues, and those potential members that they have an association with to join us. So there is a kind of a friends and family element to that, because if you have friends, well, we would very much like them to consider joining the family, that being the Friarly family.
Sure.
So there is an interview process. A letter needs to be written. There is an interview. And of course, once someone has been officially accepted, they're given a membership number, a membership card, and we do look forward to actually inducting them in an actual ceremony, a dinner. There's always a comedian or two present for that. And it's really a very, very special and wonderful night when you're welcoming new friars to the Friarly family. Those I look forward to those. And needless to say, we try to produce those induction nights as often as we can when we, have members, in numbers who are ready to be inducted, and then, of course, available. Availability sometimes is an issue as well, bringing together those people on an individual night. Of course, then they're permitted to bring, additional family and friends to join in that celebration.
And as you mentioned a little while ago, there are a number of younger members coming on board for the Friars Club. And again, things are not as they have always been, but you're making ways that, let me back up. Let me cut this out in post-production. As you mentioned a while ago, there are a number of younger members that are coming to the Friars Club, whether it's because of the lure, the lore, or the legacy. And as you think about these younger members who are going to be active for many years to come, as you think about your own work, as director of programs in the years to come. What do you see as the vision for the coming years? How are you going to work with the Friars Club and its members to help it remain fresh and relevant?
You know, the world of entertainment is ever changing, and with programs and television and cable and streaming video, and I mean, there is such a wealth of material out there. One is almost overwhelmed. There's almost too much to choose from. I think that our job, and certainly my job here, is to try to narrow that focus a little bit. I mean, we do offer a great many events during the year, if you will. Of course, there's always a little bit of a break during the summer, and then there's a very short break around the holiday time when things are a little lighter in terms of scheduling. But, we never rest, and I certainly never rest, because there's always research, there's always development, and there's always planning. People jokingly say to me, well, Bob, you enjoyed your summer and you've had a whole summer off. There's been no summer off. We've had a few less members around, perhaps just because people have been away or on vacation. But the planning for the fall season, which is basically September, October, November, and into December, all has to take place during the summer. There's an ongoing search. For me, there is a kind of creative sleuthing going on, because I always have to figure out new things and new ideas. I have to be aware of what's going on out there, see what else is happening, who is in town, take advantage of some of those individuals, whether they be a legendary a film star, or perhaps somebody from the world of musical theater, or an iconic Broadway composer, let's say, or an author. It's important for me to try to keep a little bit of a finger on the pulse of what's happening out there, take advantage of those things, to continue to make us not only feel and seem, but in reality, we need to be relevant. It's wonderful to celebrate an anniversary of, let's just say, take, for example, a George Burns or a Jerry Lewis, and a Frank Sinatra. Everyone, I think, can do that. We certainly have a special place when it comes to those individuals because of the unique relationship that they've had with us. Certainly, but there are so many others, the club still can pay tribute and celebrate individuals who may not necessarily be friars. Why are they not friars? Well, because they're new and up and coming. We would love to make them friars and welcome them. And as part of an event, we might very well bestow upon them an honorary membership, which we have certainly done in the past. Even our roasts in the past, which were always very big and certainly the stuff of legend, and weren't always available to the public, and were very private, and people didn't know what went on behind the roasting doors. We've actually held roasts here at the monastery, at the Friars Club itself, for a smaller, more intimate crowd. Of course, still runs in the numbers between 180 and 200 people, which is still, substantial, but it's not the 500 or 1,000, let's say, if it is a much, much larger event. So, we're redefining a lot of what we have done, and, trying to, again, stay relevant, but also keeping aware of what's going on in the world around us, and see how we can interface with that as much as possible when and where appropriate.
Bob, one last question for you. As we've talked about extensively, arts and entertainment will always be a part of what the Friars Club is about, part of its legacy, part of its future. And you yourself are very involved in the local music scene, working with talent, making sure that good programs are brought to the Friars Club. And we always like to ask people about their own opinions, what music means to them. So my question for you, Bob Spiotto, is this. Why music? Why is it so important to you?
Well, it's not just music, certainly. As someone who has always been, and I think, Jay, I know you've done your homework, and you know that I've been involved in the arts and theater and performing, singing, dancing. I mean, I've done all of that. I've also been very, very fortunate and very lucky to have built a life and a career in the arts, also as a producer and a director, a teacher. It's just, for me, I've always had to also reinvent myself. So wherever I wind up, wherever I am, working, if you will, it becomes for me, a labor, but not a real true labor, a labor of love, because it's what I do. It defines me, I define it, and I work hand in hand with myself going forward. Always putting ego secondary, and I'm proud to say that I've developed a real, very positive and solid reputation over the years, given all the wonderful work I've done and been so fortunate and blessed to have worked with so many wonderful people. And, all of that informs what you do going forward. I've reached back into the files and I've called upon many people and many acquaintances and many professionals I've worked with over the years and reconnected with so many of those people and tried to welcome them, into the Friarly fold here to do other things, to re-explore, to reintroduce them or perhaps introduce them here for the first time. Also to unearth and kind of bring back and take maybe a second or third look at projects and things that I've worked on in the past, because you can do that when you're fortunate enough to be in a position like this, and in the kind of work that we do. But I've always been involved in these creative endeavors, and someone once asked me, well, Bob, what if you didn't do this, well, what else would you have done? And my answer is always, well, there wouldn't have been anything else. I've always had to be involved in some way. And if I've found another venue or another way to do it, well, then that only added to it. And then that built on what came previously. And then you keep layering on top of that. So, I sign all my emails, as you probably know, with just a very simple phrase, on with the shows. And that's really what it is, because there's always another one. We're always in rehearsal for something else, or we're always looking for the next project, but that's thankfully what really keeps us going. And hopefully we're doing something that's making a difference, which to me is also very important. And we're making an impact. It may be small, but nevertheless, it's certainly an impact. And I'm honored to say that I see that with programs here. I see the reactions from people. I hear positive comments. And for me, it's important not only to give our members an experience and provide an experience, but I have the utmost respect for artists across the board, whatever it is they do. And it's important, and it's so exciting to be able to work with those people. And I look forward to working with more and more.
Bob Spiotto, Director of Programs for the Historic Friars Club in New York City. I encourage you to visit their website, friarsclub.com. There you'll find information about becoming a friar, as well as all of the great happenings during the upcoming fall season. We look forward to working with the Friars Club again in the coming months. Until next time, I'm Jay Daniels, thanking you for joining us in studio.